So there's been no banter up to
I'm waiting.
now.
That's why I haven't started the podcast yet. I'm waiting for you to just
Oh, now. Oh,
banter.
okay, good.
I don't
All
know.
right.
We can also do it afterwards. It's not. That's the point of banter. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, this is pretty good banter. Figuring out what banter is and when you should put it in. This
Yeah,
maybe Jake should put this into the podcast. This
the
part.
banter about banter. It's pretty
Yeah,
meta.
just like the the forced banter that has to go in.
Oh my god. If there's no banter, there's no banter. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Unsubscribe, the demandDrive podcast. I'm your guest host for the day, Alex Ellison, because your usual host, Adrian Alonso, had a baby. So he's a little preoccupied. And while he's out focusing on that whole thing, I get to run the show. So I don't know who gave me permission for this, but let's see what happens. Joining me today is our resident expert on video prospecting, as well as one of our AEs here at demandDrive, Greg Cammarata. Greg, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah,
Clearly hijacked the show.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes, huh? Yeah, but thanks so much for joining. I am really looking forward to this conversation because it's about a topic that I think a lot of SDRs and managers are trying to jump into, might not know where. And that topic is video prospecting, right? We're going to talk about it's one of the main ways to do alternative prospecting beyond calls and emails. Get in front of people, and we're going to sort of dive into the do's and don'ts, the best practices you have. So yeah, I'm really excited to learn from you, learn some of your tips and tricks, and see what we can get out of this. So let's kind of start there. There are plenty of studies out there that show that email and phone response rates are at all-time lows, especially during the pandemic. So knowing how to get your message out in front of the right people is more important than ever, right? So if we're starting there, I'd love to hear a little bit, Greg, about how you decide who you're going to send videos to versus not. You know, are you sending videos to everyone? Is it just, do they have to fit certain parameters or target accounts? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way I go about it now, for a long time, when I was prospecting, I actually sent Loom videos to almost every single person I sent that I did outreach to. And my reasoning for doing that was I kind of reverse engineered, like, hey, like if I'm going to prospect to somebody who's VP of sales, VP of marketing, or someone in those types of positions, they probably get inundated with emails and calls. So, and essentially what demandDrive does is that we build and manage sales development teams for tech companies. So I wanted to make sure I did it in a differentiated way. And it's also something that I learned at demandDrive too, that we've done on past programs. So I was like, hey, like this is something that definitely be great to implement for my outreach for DD. So essentially I would think to myself like, hey, what's something that I would respond to or be interested in looking at? And that's what I wanted to send to these individuals. So I started using video pretty heavily. And I initially did it, like I said, to every like relevant decision maker within the accounts I was prospecting into. And I think it's important too, like before I kind of get into the types of organizations I get in contact with, like I think it's important to like know, like I dialed it back a little bit because I think it's important to test other approaches as well, like continue using phone, like maybe doing a little bit more volume approach with it when it comes to email. But I think video is still one of my best prospecting tools. And what I do now is I purely focus it in on target accounts. And I spend a lot of time to map out like what my target accounts are. So, like working from an account-based approach, finding the best fit for demandDrive on paper, the industry, the revenue side, or excuse me, the company size, like making sure I'm really accurate or I really pinpoint the types of accounts I want to get in contact with, and then going after the decision makers within them with those personalized outreach. So for me, it's more based on the account if I'm going to use video opposed to the actual individual title.
Gotcha. And is there like a percentage you'd say of accounts that you use video for versus non?
Yeah. So like I said before, actually, there was one point when I was still, and also to touch on that, the way I structure my videos, typically I'll do that as my first touch. And then I can do some more templated follow up before when it comes to email, or I can put a regular cadence on them with the phone too. But right now, my percentage, it kind of varies based on the campaign that I'm running. So if I'm trying to do a very personalized approach to target accounts, then, it'll be 100%. I've done 50-50 before. Right now, I think I'm doing probably like 75% not video, 25% video. And I'm doing 25% to like the marquee accounts, the ones that I really want to get into. So it does vary. I don't think even what I'm doing right now is necessarily like the right or wrong answer. I think it's just based off of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point, right? Because you get various campaigns, you have different, marketing
Yeah,
funnels come
exactly.
in. Do you touch inbound at all with video, or is that stuff you're kind of like, okay, they're already interested, they'll probably respond anyway without the video?
I don't, I will incorporate video if they engage with some collateral and it's still basically cold. Maybe if they sign up for a webinar that's tied to demandDrive, I'll still use video because still they're pretty cold. But if it's like an inbound lead or if it's someone who follows a contact us form or something like that, I'm not going to use video purely because it's like opportunity cost. Like this person already has interest in demandDrive, so there's no real need for me to take that extra step and do a personalized video to them if they already have that established interest. Like I can use that towards people who have no idea who demandDrive is. So that's why I don't use it. Or
Yeah.
certain degrees of inbound, I will. Like I said, webinars or engaging with certain collateral, I will.
Yeah.
But if it's pretty straightforward inbound, then no, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you kind of touched on there. With if they're watching a webinar, that means they like video content. So I think that's also an easy way for anyone that's trying to figure out, what that split is, who they should target. If you have inbounds coming in and they watch video, send them a video, right? That makes the most sense. They're probably more likely to watch that than just like read something, because they clearly don't want their information in just like a blog article form. So yeah, just another good point there. I want to dive a little bit now into the process you go through for actually making these videos. Can you just, I guess, walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So my process is, I would say it's like a research-based approach. So, and it also kind of the little disclaimer here too. I think no matter what you do, as like when I'm an account executive DD, but I do a lot of my own prospecting. So it's easy to fall into like that pit of doing over research, especially when you're doing video, because you might want to make the video perfect or you want to touch on all these different things. I think that there is a balance between volume and quality. So I just try to do like the most, like the highest amount of quality outreach at scale possible when I'm doing video. So there's a certain points that I'll look for when I'm doing research on an account and on an individual. And I've done it for a while, so I can go through it pretty quickly. First things first, I'll look up the account. I already have my target accounts laid out, so I know they're a good fit on paper. When I'm doing research on the company itself, like specific trigger events, like I do a quick scan on LinkedIn, quick scan on Google, certified and recent articles about them, see if there's anything relevant I can bring up there. And I'm doing this quick. I don't want to I'm not reading all these articles. I'm basically just trying to find like key triggers that I think will make sense to touch on. And I do the same for the individual too. When I started doing this outreach, I overanalyzed 10 times. Like I spent a lot of time on these videos. Then I realized after a while, I'm like, hey, like if I just personalize these videos to a certain degree, they have the same result as if I hyper personalize them. So I kind of figured it out after a while. Jumping back to what I was saying before, I figure out I do the individual research on the accounts, the individual research on the prospect, and then I'll put together a video. I use a tool called Loom. I'm not really like plugging Loom right now. I just like it. I think there's other ones out there, but it's worked really well for me. And yeah, when I use the thing I really like about Loom is that the way it's structured is that it's a screen share, and then your face, the person who's recording face is in the corner. So it's nice because like those articles I reference I was researching, or that individual that I was researching, like I can go through that on my video and like walk them through my reasoning and why I want to reach out to them, why I think it would make sense to discuss with them. So kind of long answer to your question, but first I do the research, and then I'll do that video through a screen share that'll explain like each step of why I'm reaching out to an individual.
Yeah. And I think your videos are interesting in that sense. I've seen a couple of them that they're kind of, I guess, meta in the sense that we're selling sales development services, right? It's not like we can show a product demo or like necessarily a case study that just like hits on all these bullet points we want. We have to show the process. You're trying to show the process that our SDRs will take if they work for you. So how did you, I guess, come up with that idea, or did it sort of happen organically from, just taking the other outreach you had and turning it into a video?
Yeah. So one of my friends, Kevin Martinetti over at Vessel, he did it for a different actually, I might backtrack a little bit. He showed me Loom before, and he used it for like a different reason. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, video, like that would be great for, applying to demandDrive. And also, not even that aside, we at demandDrive, we do video prospecting. There's certain, like, I didn't do it too much before working on demandDrive, specifically for demandDrive. I had previous clients I worked with, I didn't really have a need for video, but I knew that other clients were doing it that worked for us. So a mix between, him introing me specifically to Loom and knowing and implementing what I learned in past programs with our traditional cadences, I thought like, oh, that'd be great pairing. So that's what prompted me to start doing it at scale initially. And I saw some pretty good results from it right from the get-go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's interesting because when I was in SDR, it was a similar thing. Like I knew video prospecting, it was a few years ago, it was early, like was a thing, but I was like, I don't need it. Yeah. But that kind of goes back to the point that you and I have talked about offline plenty of times, where even if it's not broken, you can still improve it, right? Your process might be, all right, it's why you sort of change from, 50% of your calls or your outreaches video to just like 25%, right? You can still change up your process to improve it, even if there's nothing like necessarily wrong with it.
And one thing going off that too, when it came to video, and I'm also not saying I, came up with this specifically, but just some of the videos that because I had the idea to start doing it a little bit more heavily. I was researching some stuff online, and a lot of it kind of went back to that. I feel like it was still very much a volume play, and some of the tutorials I saw online about video, I got this vibe. I'm like, well, this is just another way to leave a voicemail. And I was like, I don't really like that. So I think it would make more sense if you made it personalized, and kind of going back to that initial point of like, hey, what's something I would respond to or something I would be interested in engaging with? So that was my biggest thing for videos, to kind of go back to that theme of like, would I respond to this? Would I watch this? And just not make it like a digital voicemail opposed to a regular one.
Yeah.
Like just only talking. Like, so if I did those videos and, it's just my face talking only about demandDrive and what we do, like, on the other end of that, if I was a prospect, I'd be like, I don't care about this. I'm not going to watch this right now, unless it's a perfect timing, then they will. But I want to kind of explain my reasoning of why I think it would make sense for us to chat.
Yeah. And you partially answered my next question, which is asking sort of, do you have templated videos, or are you personalizing every single one of them to the individual? And so it sounds like you're personalizing every single one. I'm curious, have you ever tried sort of a templated video that you send out maybe to, those lower target accounts or anything like that?
Yeah. So that's actually something I'm implementing. So for a while, I was sending personalized videos to every single person. It was working really well. Did that 50-50. And now I'm going to try and steer away from that. So kind of like what I said before this, I'm kind of backtracking on that and actually going to do that to a certain degree. So I have a few things that I'm working on to do that. I haven't implemented it yet, really. Mm-hmm. So I can't really talk too much about how effective it is, but I'm gonna test it out just to see if it gets traction.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, right? Because that's why we have templated emails. That's why we have kind of like voicemail scripts and things like that, because not everyone's a high target account.
Yeah.
If it's lower, but you still want to send a video, right? Maybe that'd be a good thing to have for webinar leads, like, because they all watch the webinar. You can relate that. You can keep it personalized to that extent, but still send it out to each person. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Probably gonna do that actually.
There you go. Cool. So when it comes to diving back into sort of the creative side of making these videos, how creative do you get? Do you sort of follow your same sort of standardized template but personalize it, or do you get, I don't know, maybe gimmicky? Do you have some fun with it? Do you maybe even throw in some things that like aren't quite as relevant just to give yourself more personality in the videos or anything like that?
Yeah, so it's kind of like trying to find that fine line. In the beginning, I feel like I was definitely like more gimmicky with it. My videos were longer than they really needed to be. Over time, I kind of just figure out what people care about. And it kind of goes back to that. You have to find that balance between quality and scale, and making sure that you're not overanalyzed, because at the same time too, like, I think some people might fall into a pitfall of just, you're making these perfect videos and you send them only to like, a small group of people. And because I've sent like videos where I feel like I've like really personalized to a high degree, like did a lot of things, and they never get back to me, or they never even view it. So you have to be kind of aware of that as well. But yeah, I try to still be as creative I can with that process. And I've figured it out over time where I can still, I figured out a process where I can still be creative but also not overanalyze it. So like when I'm scanning their LinkedIn, I'll take a look at some of their recent posts to see if there's anything I can bring up, or if there's anything funny in their bio I can reference. There was the two funny ones that come to mind is that one prospect that I got a lead with, or went back and forth with, actually was like an It's Always Sunny fan, like the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I watch that show, and I reference that in my subject line just because I thought it'd be funny to them. And then the video too, I talk a little bit about it. It's a little gimmicky, but at the same time, it differentiates, and it's something that I would open up, so I would view it. And then also, like, there's another person who I spoke with that, just from doing some scanning on LinkedIn, if this is getting really deep into LinkedIn, but if sometimes they have that audio thing next to their name. Yeah. If you hit it, like it said Tom Brady, so I only addressed him as Tom Brady in the video because I thought it was kind of funny. So yeah, like to that degree, I'll get I'll personalize. Sometimes when I was starting out, I would not just Google the company, but I'd Google the individual, find out articles they wrote from years ago. And sometimes I was referencing articles that had no relevance at all. Then I realized, like, I'm just trying, like, this is me trying to granted, like, I might get a higher chance they'll engage with my video after seeing it because it's so personalized to them. But at that point, I was like, I'm actually taking away from my actual productivity because I'm not spending my time on doing this for other people who might be more, where it just makes more sense to speak with others. So like, it's once again, just finding that fine line between, personalized video and not overanalyzing anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That Tom Brady thing is funny. I don't think I've ever come across someone. It's because it's the pronounce your name feature, right? Like if you have a weirdly spelled name or something that people can't pronounce.
His name was like Bob Smith or something like that, or something like nothing to do with Tom Brady. And then if you hit that, it just said Tom Brady. I just thought it was funny because the reason why I hit it is because his name was so easy to say. I was like, why does he have this thing? And then he said that. And then I heard Tom Brady. I was like, oh, this guy's actually very funny.
It helps that you're a Patriots fan.
Yeah, he was like, I think he was in like California too, which is crazy. But yeah, it does help. It does help that Pats fan for it.
Nice. The last question I got for you, and then we can sort of talk about some maybe tips and best practices. But and I think you touched on this earlier, but where do you put video into your overall cadence? And is that something you've also experimented with as far as, end, beginning, middle, that sort of thing?
Yeah, this is one thing where I feel like there's people who have differing views on it, and it's something that I'm always willing to test out new campaigns and new approaches. I typically do it as my first touch, and the reason why I have a reason why I do that. I think it's a great first touch, and if you get in contact with them, they're really blown away by it sometimes, and they're quick to engage in a meeting. My follow-up emails, allows me to be a little bit more templated because I already did all that research before. I can reply to the email chain that I sent the video in. You send some bump emails, basically just trying to kick them to that first email I sent their way. And then also on the other end too, like doing this research on these accounts and these individuals helps a lot for the rest of the sales development process. So like, when I'm sending follow-up emails, that's helpful if I can, lean into some of the research I did before. When I use the phone, I understand I have a base understanding of what their company does. If they have any trigger events that I can reference, and I did it all already. So, doing that all in the first touch, I think super helpful. And then on the other hand, though, I know there's people who are against that. Some people believe in sending more of like a mail merge initially, then sending videos to people who engage with it or open it. For me personally, I've had my most success leading off with it, and I'm doing different approaches now. I'm not saying I won't do that in the future, but it's something that I like doing. It's something that I've had success with, so I haven't really experimented doing it as a second or third or fourth or anything like that.
For sure. And then when these people respond, when you get a response, is it normally to that video, that first touch, or do you sometimes get people like you send the video, then you follow up email, and then they respond about the video?
Yeah.
Or like, are there people that ignore the video and they're just really there for the email? Anything like that?
Yeah. I have people who don't even view the video, and sometimes the content itself is enough. So that kind of goes back to that. It goes back to that thing I touched on earlier, where you have to kind of balance it, because there's some people who don't even need the video to respond to you. And, you're kind of essentially might be wasting a little bit of time, like doing all this personalization if they're going to reach out to you anyway. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's the first touch, sometimes it's the second touch. For one deal I closed fairly recently, it was like the fourth touch that, the individual finally got back in contact with me. And then, I did send a video to them initially. And so I think it does follow traditional sales development cadence, because also too, like you have to, I always think about, I think also an important note to say about these videos is that if you're making them as an SDR or an account executive or wherever, and like someone doesn't reply to it, like make sure to not like take it personally, because like they get inundated with tons of messaging. So like it's a great way to differentiate. And when they do see it, it's kind of like, wow, like what's this in my inbox? And they can get, and I think it helps a lot to get a lead. But it does follow, from what I've seen, it follows a traditional sales development cadence, at least when it comes to email.
Were you sort of hitting a similar mental roadblock? Because I know when you start as an SDR, you send all these messages and you do feel a little dejected until you kind of get used to people not responding. When you started sending videos, did that kind of reset for you, or were you able to just kind of brush it off because you already had the experience?
I think I was able to brush it off.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I wouldn't even say I think before the SDR work that I was doing was like, it was working pretty well before, but I just thought to myself like, hey, like I'm going to test this out, and it worked for a while. So I kind of just go through trends on what's working, what's not. So it wasn't like a big drastic reset for me or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nice. Greg, before I let you go, do you have any sort of last tips, tricks, best practices, or anything to do with your video prospecting that you want to share with everyone?
Not necessarily. I think we touched on everything. I would just, even if it's not video prospecting, if you're sending email, I would just think to yourself before you send it out, like, hey, would I respond to this or engage with it? And if you think you would, then I think it might be, then you're good to send it. Specifically for email, like LinkedIn outreach. Just make sure because there's some SDRs who like will send these templated emails, and like even them, they'll kind of cringe when they look at it, like purely just going for the numbers game here. I think if you just put some sense of personalization in there, or video, and you feel comfortable sending out, then I think that's a good place to start.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Greg, thanks again for taking the time to talk about video prospecting strategy and all that fun stuff. If people want to connect with you or learn more about demandDrive or yourself, where's the best place to find you?
My MySpace page. No, I'm just kidding. Just LinkedIn, Greg Cammarata, demandDrive.
I'm gonna go find it. I'm gonna go find your MySpace page. I'm gonna do it.
I don't have one, sadly.
You never had one?
No. Did you have one?
Yeah, I was in middle school. Yeah. Come on.
No, I never had MySpace. I feel like when I look back, I might have even been late to Facebook and Instagram. I actually think I got last year, so I'm pretty late to it all.
You also, I don't think I've ever posted on Instagram. Don't go look for Greg on Instagram.
I don't check it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Greg. Thank you to everyone who's watching or listening to this. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to unsubscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you're tired of my voice, don't worry. Adria will be back next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank goodness. I'm just kidding, Alex. See you later.
See you, Greg. I mean, you're a salesperson. You tell me. You people love to talk.
That's true.
I love to talk. I'm talking this damn thing. That's a Shrek quote.
That was a Shrek quote.
Mm-hmm.
What part of Shrek is that in?
It's when
I guarantee you that's not in Shrek.
When they're collecting the fairy tale creatures and Donkey walks up and the old lady's like, I've got a talking donkey. And they're like, that's good for 10 shillings if he can talk.
Oh,